Hello again, everybody. Momentary here. Had some extra time today, so I figured I would show a couple pulls, maybe go a little more in depth in some of the mechanics. I know I kind of rush through stuff occasionally just because I'm so used to it, so I want to make sure that that I kind of get the point across with all kinds of different little tips and tricks that I'd give you. So the first thing I want to do here is targeting. So targeting when you are kind of enchanting in Chardok is pretty important. Um, you want to be able to very quickly kind of sick your uh, sick your pet on a target and be able to kind of get them down as soon as possible, so you can gate before everything gets to you. So first and foremost, what I would recommend is setting up a couple different things in your UI. So I've got this collaborator here that I'm going to take out, and I've got a few Iksar miners here. So you'll notice in some of my videos I can quickly switch between the two targets, and even when I'm casting, right, I can switch between the targets, which is very, very useful. So the way I do that, I go into my keybinds here, and I go to target. So toggle last two targets is an option down here. I just have it bound to my little tilde key, so it's easily accessible. I start casting dictate by hitting Alt 4, and then I can switch target very easily. That way, once your dictate lands, you can very quickly send your pet against the your first target. Another thing you'll probably see and hear me do a lot. I tend to I have a very clicky keyboard, so you can kind of hear that probably coming on the mic. Is use this pet attack macro. So this pet attack macro, it has 3 lines: attack, back off, attack. So you'll notice in EverQuest, if you tell your pet to attack something when it's already actively attacking and being attacked by something, it won't change targets, right? So it'll just continue to attack what it's attacking, and then when that target is eventually dead, it'll move to the second target. So the advantage of having a macro like this is you can prevent that from happening, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. But I have actually, this is bound to Shift F, and then my back off macro, which is just pet back off twice, is bound to just F. So basically, if I want to sick the pet after a different target, I just hit Shift F, and if I want to sick the pet on, or back off the pet, I just hit F. So it's very easy to kind of spam those keys. So we've got the collaborator up here. I'll kind of demonstrate both of these in this poll. So again, target the collaborator, target the miner, and then be able to switch back and forth very easily. So I start my cast of dictate, and then I switch my target back to the miner. And then as soon as that lands, I can hit that Shift F key, and you'll see that it says attacking, calming down, attacking, right? And that's just because of the way that the macro is set up. So you'll see I grabbed that slave driver on my target as I'm running away, which will kind of let me just spam that Shift F, and you can see the attacking dialogue over and over again. And what that allows me to do is have the pet attack the slave driver, and kind of drag him towards the slave driver. So we can kind of tell that he got there because slave driver's no longer at 100%. So easy as that. All right, so next up, I'm gonna kind of venture back to the library, and we're gonna pull the apprentice. The last couple times I've tried to do that, I've gotten some crit resist, so we'll see if that happens here. But kind of the next mechanic I'll show is how I pacify and how we can do it safely just in case of one of those crit resists. So I'll head down to the library now, and we'll see you in a second. Alright, we're down here. So, when I pull the Lorekeeper, I typically want to pacify these two. So what I do is I get them both on target, and then I can toggle very easily between them, just so I don't have to run back down and kind of get another target, since I've only got 2 pacify targets. So the first thing I'll show you, so over time, right, your faction can kind of go up and down. As a chanter, you're not taking much of a hit, but when you kill a named, obviously, you take a hit every time. So, I'm down to amiable. I'm kindly with my alliance stick here, but you can kind of see as I con. Maybe I'll make the text in this box a little bigger so you can see. So you see, I'm kindly currently. That will change, obviously, if you have aggro from a mob. So if something is above glares to you, and you aggro it, it will change to glares at you threateningly. Not true of scowling, so if something scowls at you and you aggro it, it will still scowl. Same with if it's already glares. But if it is not KOS to you, then you can kind of tell the difference between whether it's on you or not. So this is very useful for pacifying. It's also very useful for blurring, which I'll show you in a little bit. But for pacify, you'll see I got the library guard conning kindly to me. I will begin to cast my pacify, and as I cast it, I typically will just hit con, and that was a successful pacify. As you can see, I didn't get a red message of resist, so that's good. So he's still kindly. I'll switch to the librarian, and I will continuously con, and I got him first try too. So maybe we'll have to try this again, but that was those were a couple of good pacifies. Alright, so I'll grab the Lorekeeper here, and he shouldn't bring any friends. And usually I will send him up to these defenders up here. None of these defenders will summon. These royal guards do if they get hurt enough. So I just kind of leave him there, and there's six mobs to beat him down. So usually more than sufficient for the time. And he's about to go. And we gate. And I'm sure eventually we'll get a crit resist here, so I can better demonstrate the mechanic there. But pretty much the point, right, is once you realize that something's on you, even if they don't have sort of an emote or a saying that they say when they aggro you, you'll be able to tell right away, and then you can get your global cooldown reset, and you can get gated away before they get to you and beat you to death. All right, so the last guy, the last camp I've been doing is Deathfang. So I'll run down to Deathfang, show you how I do that one. When I'm down at Deathfang, I will kind of go through some of my keybinds. They're very specific to me. I'm a little weird the way I do WASD, because I have my hand kind of on home row. So, you know, resting position, my fingers are on like ASDF, which is not typical if you do use WASD for movement. But you can obviously bind it however you're comfortable. But I would definitely recommend having like quick access to certain spells that'll save your life in some very hectic situations. All right, so we're at Deathfang, and his PH hasn't spawned yet. But I will show you my keybinds here. So, couple things. G is my global cooldown reset, so basically I just tap that to use my stick here, my Rod of Insidious Glamour, which works out of inventory. My F key is bound to back off, as I mentioned, and my Shift F is bound to this pet attack macro, so those are both there. Shift G I have as Boltrans, so in some cases, especially in like Velks, various places like that, it's really nice to have that at a very close hand. What I really like to do in Velks is be able to do my short stun, my long stun, and then get a Boltrans in on the pet before the stuns break, right? Which is really handy to kind of like get back on track right away instead of having to mez and then wait for the mez to break, etc. Here it's a little less important, but I'm used to it anyway, so it's fine. I also frequently use my E and V keys. So E is fetter, is root, and V I have as gate. So I think everywhere that I farm, I have a little bit of a different configuration. Gate is actually super important in Chardok because obviously every time you see me pull, I cast the spell. So it's nice to have close at hand, so I'm not fat fingering something or alt and the wrong key, and then I don't end up gating in time. My B key is actually double bound, so this is again sort of a consequence of leveling up. The B key I used to use as both my GG ring to cast Invis on myself and a self-target. So I would have in hot button 10 or 0, I'd have the self-target, and then in 4 I'd have my Goblin Gazugi ring. So when I wanted to break Charm, I would just kind of mash on B, and eventually it would cast it on me, no matter what I had targeted, etc., and that would break Charm in order to kind of save a pet from dying or prevent the pet from killing the target before Charm breaks, and you can get 100% XP for both. So that's kind of how I set it up, but I think the most important here are the pet commands. I have it close at hand. I have root close at hand. My global cooldown, obviously, you always want that to be very, very close. And then gate as well. So Deathfang is due in about 2 minutes, so I typically will pacify one of these mobs. So I'll get the Mauler here on target, and then I run over here. So give myself some space just in case of a crit resist, and we can range find with our Insidious Glamour Rod. And again, same. So that time, Pacify was resisted, but the mob still kindly considers me. So I didn't aggro him or get a crit resist. Try it again here. And again, another resist. So this happens frequently where you'll get a bunch of resists in a row, which is fine. You just, again, if you get a crit resist, then that's when you have to kind of run away. And I'm losing my charisma buff. Throw that back on myself. Obviously, when you're going through pacifying, you want that 255 charisma every time, just again to minimize your crit resist rate. There we go. So again, we got the successful message, and we will run back. And there is the PH. So again, similar to what I showed you in the last clear of the collaborator. I grab these two on my target, so again I can switch very easily between them. I start casting Dictate, and then I switch my target, and then I get ready. Right as Dictate hits, I want to be spamming that pet attack. So he immediately goes after the mob that's gonna come kind of rip my face off. And again, just targeting mobs on the way out, just so that I can kind of drag them backwards. A lot of the time, just backing them off will do the trick, but I just like kind of the yardstick you can use of telling exactly where the mob is, how far it's gotten by making it attack other stuff and seeing that health bar go down a little bit. Alright, now I'll go through really quick the different buffs that I always put on. So, and I just lost one, so doing a bad job. One thing I can demonstrate here too, so I'll buff these folks. And sometimes, yes, so buffing them got me aggro. You can see that he's glaring at me threateningly now. So what I usually do after I buff people and I get aggro, I'll cast a Mez on the mob, and you can see he changed right here from threatening to amiably. So that means that my my Mesmerize also kind of took the blur effect on the mob. So he not only is mezzed, but also he forgot about me. So at that point, once those two XPing folks kill the mob, then it won't cause me to have a faction hit, which is exactly what I like. So anyway, buffs. Obviously, you want Levitate here. So I would recommend getting yourself a Pegasus Feather Cloak if you can. Obviously, that's a little bit of chunk of change. I think they go for 10 or 12k at this point. So not terribly expensive, and it will save you a lot of inventory space. And just having to haul around all those bat wings is just kind of annoying. You also don't have to use the... You could use the Air Elemental Illusion, which will give you Levitate innately. However, that does lower your faction. So watch out if you are using it. If you drop too low in your faction, it could make you KOS. I've had that happen to a couple people, that they get up to, Indifferent or Amiably, and then they cast the illusion, and suddenly they're KOS and they're dead before they know it. So that's something to watch out for. You probably want a J-Boots buff, so you'll notice that every time that I gate, I will always kind of tap that 4 key. I wear my J-Boots just because the extra XP from wearing my SS boots isn't really going to make much of a difference. So I wear them, and then every time I gate, every time I pull, I'll refresh them. And if I'm doing more than one pull every cycle, so typical respawn in Chardok, it varies a little bit, but it's usually around 20 minutes. But if I'm doing more than one mob at a time, then essentially I'll always have J-Boots up, which is useful for, when you're pulling. It's nice to be able to get a little more distance a little quicker on the mobs that you're pulling. So recommend J-Boots if you can afford them. They're one of the best items in the game for pretty much any class. Especially Chanters. Obviously, got the mind buffs for regen. If you're only doing one camp, you still probably want them on, but it's not as big of a deal because you're going to be sitting meditating most of the time anyway. Overwhelming Splendor. Obviously, more charisma is good. If you're already capped, obviously you don't need it, but I usually... if I'm capped out in Charisma with that buff on, I will usually focus on other stats instead if I'm picking out gear. Rune 5, I will always have Rune on, or at least most of the time, especially when I'm pulling a named, just because you can absorb a couple extra hits, and when you're hasting your pet, especially, it becomes pretty important, or else you can get beat down really fast, and you'll just get constantly interrupted. So Rune helps with that, and then extra HP. Is always good, and I have my epic buff on just for kind of the extra few stats that I get for it. It doesn't cost anything, so no harm. Some folks will refresh Bedlam. Some folks will wear like Umbra, the AC buff. I don't really bother. I usually just have these. This is my typical stack that I have on. So, all right. I'll probably fast forward, and once I get it named, I will show you exactly what that looks like on these camps. Well, lucky me. First respawn here, we got a Trustee. So one of the weird things is the Trustee is, like most of the other names, or all the other names, is on it's on the same faction as everything else here. Never seen anybody kill these. Ooh, a shovel. The Trustee himself is on the same faction as the all the other mobs here. So you have to do all of this pacifying. The Collaborator, weirdly, is on the same faction, I think, as the slaves here, like Niblek, because he cons Glowers just like all of them. So we'll have to go through and pacify all of these skeletons. So again, I come over here to do it, and I use the same method where I con. So he resisted. Annoyingly, Pacify has a little bit of a recast time, so you can't just immediately do a global cooldown reset and cast it again if it's in your first slot. You gotta kind of wait maybe a second or two. You see, I did it. I was a little too hasty there. Alright, first one is good. And again, switch targets using my little tilde key to the second one. This process usually isn't too onerous. Obviously, at times it can take you a while to get these guys sorted out. There we go. I've got 2 of 3. I just need to get this guy. There we go. Obviously, you could get pretty creative with how you do that if you want to. For the last one, if you want to rapture him and then tash him to try to do it a little better, or do it a little easier, sure. If you're not confident in your pacified landing well. All right, so I'm going to use this slave driver here. We do have a miner over in the corner here, but they're far enough apart that you won't get aggro. Trustee is very straightforward because of this, so what I usually will do is I'll cast a mez him, and then I will tash him, and then I'll mez him again, and you'll notice I'm using level 4 mez. Pull that up, because it is extremely cheap, only 20 mana, and it really does the job just fine. You'll notice I'm going to keep recasting until he no longer cons threatening to me, which can sometimes take a little bit. There we go. So now he's kindly. So I'll just kind of sit here, wait for it to wear off, and then I will snag him with Boltrans and send him in. Yeah, so just to go down my usual spell list, I typically my swap slots are these top three. I usually have Dictate just sitting in 4 because I use it a lot, so I want its cooldown to just always be ticking. I have either Boltrans or Allure, usually in slot 5. Gate in slot 6, which again I mentioned was corresponds to my V key. Fetter in 7, so my best route, and that corresponds to my E key. And then I usually just keep level 4 Mez in my 8th slot. And that's kind of if this Slave Driver, for instance, breaks, then I will essentially cast that on him to control him, get him remezed. I don't really love using stuns in Chardok. There's just so many mobs, and they're just sort of chilling, which if you hit them with a stun, they're not going to be anymore. So it's just personal preference. I know a lot of people do use color stuns here, and I use them elsewhere. I just prefer not to use them in Chardok. Prefer to just try to control my pet with Mez. That's why it's important to kind of keep your distance too. Alright, so Trustee is getting low. Really doesn't like roots sticking to him, does he? Alright, so we got an Earring of Cleansing. I have one of them on this character already, so I'm just going to gate, and then I'll bring in an alt to come grab it quick. Right, so in the middle of pacifying for this Lorekeeper. Again, I had this in my other video, so not super exciting or new, but figure may as well capture it and run you through it again. So again, I'm going to pacify the 2 mobs that are next to our target. There we go. And I think I'm gonna, so this is another way that I've kind of been doing it. I'll pacify the Lorekeeper himself, and then I can grab that pet that's kind of running around. There we go. So I'm gonna wait until he runs down here, and he's about here in his patrol. And I'll grab him with a Rapture, and we'll get killing. So he's right here. He's a sorcerer right now. That'll be interesting. The big danger here is if you don't have the best pet, especially if you don't have a... Usually the Royal Guards are the best because they're just straight melee. They won't stop to cast spells or anything. But the problem with having a kind of a subpar pet is that you'll sometimes have issues with killing the mob, the named mob, before the pacifies run out. For most mobs, I won't do this, but again, I'm especially with a caster mob, I'm kind of afraid that he's not going to get him down in time, so I'll toss some help in there. Chanters are not known for their raw damage output, obviously, but every little bit can help. Let's see what goodies he has. Oh, he's got the vocal cords. Alright, well I gotta loot that on somebody else or do some transferring. So, cool, good kill. Hopefully we'll get some more named. Alright, we got a Deathfang. So, seen all of the named for these 3 camps. Alright, so I've already pacified the Mauler, so I'm going to get the Sunder Fiend here. And for Deathfang, I usually pull him kind of across to where that pet was that I used for Trustee. Just find it to be a little bit safer with some additional kind of room to work with. So, I'll mez the pet, throw a Tash on him, throw a Pacify on him, and mez him again till he's cleared. Alright, and then I will usually, it's not necessary, I don't think, because you can work around it, but I like pacifying the skeleton, just to make, again, give myself a little bit more room. Sometimes I pay for it because he gives me a crit resist, but there we go. Not this time. Alright. So with Deathfang, I'm gonna, like I said, I'll pull him all the way across to the other side there. Grab him. I think he's real goofy looking because that model being so big is just kind of funny to me, at least. So so he'll follow me all the way over here. Someone made a pull. It shouldn't affect us. Swap to a lure. I'm a little bit low on mana, I'm noticing. Okay, so he goes there. Then I'll just run over here and just get ready for when he breaks to give him a root. Tash him, slow him. He resisted, but let's grab our slave driver anyway. Get him, ouch. There we go. Don't love being without a rune on, but we can still do this here. He resisted the slow, but I'm low enough on mana, and he's losing, so I think we'll be all right. We'll just pull the pet back so he doesn't kill himself. Okay. Fairly easy kill, just as long as he doesn't break in these last few seconds. And we'll see what he's got. Got some pauldrons. Wonderful. That's some good loot. Alright, so been through all three of the names. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.